right, the next series of videos, we're going to move on to talking about attitudes, the study of attitudes in social psychology. And you may be familiar with the term attitude. In everyday language, we often use attitude to mean someone being like disrespectful or sassy. Like we'll say, don't you have an attitude with me? But attitude actually has more of a general meaning. These are our evaluative beliefs or opinions about people, objects, or ideas. So this attitudes can include things like what you think of a particular product, what you think of a particular class, like when you fill out your student opinions of teaching at the end of the semester. That's measuring your attitudes about the class. It can also be like, do you like a person? Do you care for a particular person? What you think about them, what your opinion is of a political candidate, a celebrity. Those are all examples of attitudes. Now, with attitudes, we can have two general types of attitudes. We can have explicit attitudes or implicit attitudes. Explicit means out in the open. Implicit means more hidden, more subtle. Explicit attitudes, these are beliefs or opinions that we hold consciously. They're in our conscious awareness. We have access to them. We can describe them to others fairly easily. So explicit attitudes, you can just design a survey and say, tell me your attitudes about this thing, this person, this idea. But implicit attitudes are much harder to study because they are not as easily accessible to the person. They are hidden to the person. These are beliefs that you have that influence your behavior, but you're not aware of them. And here's where we get into some research on sensitive topics. So, I'm not going to have complete time in a class like this, which is a survey course. It's a survey course, Introductory Psychology. I'm just introducing you to terms and concepts. I'm not going to be able to fully go into study of things like, what would be some things that would be implicit attitudes? Things like implicit racism, implicit sexism, implicit fat phobia. Attitudes that people have that perhaps can lead them to treat people differently or just think of people differently, but they're not aware of it. They would, think of racism. Oftentimes when I do like a classroom example, I'll just ask people like, okay, think of the most racist person you know. All right, many people know someone who they can say, yeah, that person's pretty racist. All right, and I say, if you ask that person, are you racist? Would they say, of course I'm not racist? And many times people will say, yeah, actually they don't think that they're racist. So, sensitive types of attitudes, controversial types of attitudes, people don't always hold them explicitly. Sometimes they hold them more implicitly, and it makes it difficult to study these types of attitudes to try to figure out how can we study beliefs, opinions that shape people's behavior, but they are not in their conscious awareness. So it does make things more complicated. Now, another thing about attitudes is they have three general components. All right, so attitudes, they have three components. The first is an affective component. That's affective with an A. If you don't know already, and some students at Intro Psych, they have not been introduced to this distinction. Affect with an A has to do with feelings. It's not like affect, like you affect someone's behavior. It is confusing. Sometimes when you see that written, you're like, wait, what are they affecting? And then you realize, oh no, they're using affect as in emotion, mood, feelings, all right? So an affective component, that includes your emotions or feelings towards the attitude object. Something can give you certain emotions. Like if you have really, really bad memories associated with a particular place, like a school. Maybe you had a horrible time in school and you pass by your old school and you're like, oh, that evokes memories for me. That's the affective component. It affects your feelings. All right. You can also have your behavioral component. The behavioral component, that involves your behavior, all right, how people act or behave towards the attitude object. So do you avoid the school that gives you the bad memories? That would be a behavioral component. And then finally, we have the cognitive component, and that's your thinking, your thoughts about the particular attitude, thoughts and beliefs people hold about a particular object. So all three of those are elements of attitude. So sometimes when we're doing research, sometimes we're interested in all three. Sometimes we will focus on one specific component of an attitude, right? But these are the things that these are the basic aspects of attitudes that we're going to start with, and then we're going to start to talk more about attitudes, but specifically how attitudes can be connected, how they can be influential on other things in our lives, like can attitudes change our actual behavior. So that's coming up next.